Hello everyone, and welcome to the ASMR review show. For this video, I'm going to be doing another boss video on the bosses of Hollow Knight. For those of you who don't know, what I've done in the past is record the first victory of each boss in a video game, and then I've narrated over it in a soft-spoken and or whispered voice for your relaxation, also known as ASMR. So, this game is Hollow Knight. It is a 2D platformer, hack-and-slash, Metroid-vania sort of game. And it's a very cliche thing to compare everything to Dark Souls these days. You know, if it's difficult, it's like Dark Souls. If it has bosses, it's like Dark Souls, or anything like that. But there are certain circumstances where the comparisons are justified, and I'm probably going to make a decent amount of comparisons in this video, just as a warning. So, this intro is setting up the nature of the world that was the Hollow Knight, the titular character. He is sealed away inside the Temple of the Black Egg, and those three masks on the seal are the three dreamers whose power is keeping the Hollow Knight sealed away. We are this creature here, known simply as the Knight, not the Hollow Knight, and he has come to the realm here of Hollownest to, you know, take names and conquer, pretty much. Again, a similar comparison to Dark Souls is that the story is mostly told indirectly through the use of the environment and vague NPC characters and stuff. So for the first part of the video, I'm just going to let the intro play and give you my overall thoughts and explanations. A short word of warning, though. If you're expecting all of the bosses, you got clickbaited, because there's no Absolute Radiance in this video. And the reason for that is the Radiance is the final boss of the game. And there is a super difficult version of him you can access as well. But to do that, you have to beat the Pantheon of Hollownest, which is a boss gauntlet where you fight literally every boss in the game in a row before you can fight him. And I tried real hard, but I could not get even relatively close. So the Radiance is still in this video at the end, but the Absolute Radiance is not. I did beat Pure Vessel, though, and Nightmare King Grimm, so I think it balances out, maybe. You know, feel free to roast me in the comments, or don't, or roast me for something else, you know, like my lack of skill in this game. So, Hollow Knight is an interesting game for me because I never really played much of the 2D Metroid-vania type games. But coming off of Dark Souls, I think it was a good choice because Dark Souls was always a game that was trying to take the style of Metroid-vania games, that is, games typically inspired by Metroid and Castlevania, and put those into a 3D game. And Dark Souls is kind of the main game that was able to break through the mold and do that. So now it's interesting because there are games that have now taken influences from Dark Souls and put it back into a 2D Metroid-vania style of game. And that's what Hollow Knight is. It has a vast open world, many bosses. Like Dark Souls, you lose your form of currency, in this case Xero, when you die. Healing is a little slow, so you have to balance your heals between the boss moves. So yeah, all around it's a very fun, enjoyable game that can end up getting fairly challenging near the end. And I really love it for that. It's basically Dark Souls, but what if cute bug? You can quote me on that. So, without further ado, I think it's about time to get into some bosses then. So, the first boss you'll probably encounter, this is the Gruz Mother. And it doesn't really have much for attacks, just this one where it like bangs its head all around the arena. And you just have to get your attacks in between those hits. And as starter bosses go, I think it's a good start. It doesn't offer too much of a challenge, as long as you know what you're properly doing. And yeah, unlike Dark Souls, it doesn't relentlessly give you a giant challenge at the start. And I do like that this sets the stage for the idea of metamorphosis, because after the mother dies, all the children burst out of its corpse, which is similar to what might eventually happen to all of the grubs when they get absorbed by the grub father in the end. So I kind of got caught off guard by this and took a few hits. And just want y'all to keep in mind that this is my first victory over each boss. It is not a perfect strategy guide. So I'll give you tips and advice, but again, there may be some cringe here and there, as with most of my videos. So the next boss, this is actually the first one I fought, is the False Knight. I was surprised I beat him the first try, because I think he offers a significant challenge. He has attacks that cause those little AoE waves, which are similar to some of the smaller husks that you fought earlier on. And the other tough thing about him is, you see in the top left, the meter beside your health is the soul meter, which determines how much you can heal and or use spells. And the thing is, normally this is filled up by attacking enemies, but in the case of the False Knight, when you hit his armor, you don't actually gain soul. You only gain it when you're attacking him in the weakened state, when you can actually hit his body. So it forces you to have to not rely on healing all the time to get out of trouble, which can be tough. For a first game, your instinct is to play it safe and back off a bit, but you have to be aggressive with the False Knight. The lore behind him, because like Dark Souls, this game has a lot of hidden lore for the bosses. The idea is that he's a False Knight because his armor previously belonged to one of the main knights of the king. I think Hegemal or something like that is his name. And this sort of maggot grub type thing stole the armor from the knight while he was sleeping, and he wanted to use it to protect his family. But of course course, he's an imposter. So, in a way, it is kind of tragic in that he's simply trying to protect his family. But at the same time, he's attacking you, so we gotta put him down. Now, for most of the bosses, there is a stronger dream version that you can fight later, and I'll be showing those alternate versions of each boss towards the end of the video. Next boss you fight is the official waifu of Hollow Knight, and this is Hornet. And she is a warrior princess, I believe. May or may not be related to the Pale King, perhaps his daughter. And she's attacking you because she considers you to be just a wandering husk. And so you have to basically prove yourself to her that you're more than that. And I was actually surprised I beat her on the first attempt, because she's a pretty tough fight. At this point in the game, you don't have much for mobility, and she can move quite fast. Although it is nice that she announces most of her attacks. If you sort of can pick up on the dialogue, you can predict what move she's going to use. But you have to watch out for that needle attack, because she likes to, throw the needle out, but then it comes back to her. And while we're doing this, let's have ourselves a drink, shall we? So, some craft beer is the perfect match for Hollow Knight. Excellent. Really, the trick with Hornet is you have to stay mobile, and I would only recommend trying to heal when you have a safe distance away, or use the opportunity when she is stunned. It's one thing you'll need to pick up on, because later in the game, a lot of the bosses, your only opportunity to even consider healing is when they are stunned. The other thing to point out is that while these bosses may be tough now, all you really need to do to trivialize them is come back when you have all the equipment. There is a boss select mode of sorts in the Hall of the Gods, in the Godseeker DLC. So, if you're to fight an early boss, then with all the abilities you didn't have, it will easily trivialize the fight. And when you beat Hornet, you're going to get the dash ability, which lets you get across sort of larger gaps. This is a really great fight, probably one of my favorites in the game, because there's a lot to Hornet's character. It's really interesting that it's not like a beast trying to kill you, it's an honorable warrior who's testing your strength. And there's a lot to her story, a lot that I'm not even sure the entire community has figured out yet. I think they're still trying to debate whether or not she's from the Void or not. Though that may be solved in the upcoming game. It's kind of cool that as soon as I play Hollow Knight, that's when they decide to announce the Hollow Knight Silk Song, which is sort of a sequel, I guess. This next bit here I left in, it's just a bit of lore, and it's basically the three dreamers realizing that you're trying to break the seals so that you can defeat the Hollow Knight. Now with those dreamers, I didn't show them in this video because they aren't bosses. You simply go up to them, hit them once, and then you've defeated them. So, from this point in the game onwards, a lot of the bosses can be fought in many different orders and potential paths. So, the Crystal Guardian is in Crystal Peak, which is like this sort of mining area where there's all these bugs mining crystals. So he is optional, but you'll want to defeat him so that you can access the bench that he was sitting on. He only has really 2 attacks, and that is the Laser Blast and his Screech, which summons a bunch of other lasers. But the tough part about him is that I find that his laser seems like it'll charge up for a lot longer than it actually does. So, if you want to really trivialize this fight and the second fight against the enraged version of him, come back when you have the Shade Cloak so that you can dash through him. I think that is one thing that made the beginning of the game tough for me, is I kept on treating the dash ability as like a Dark Souls dodge, where you had iframes, and the thing is, you don't with the dash. But later on, when I fought the Crystal Guardian with the Shade Cloak, you simply dash from one side to the other, and the fight's over in about 30 seconds. So, if he's giving you trouble, then I would come back when you have the Shade Cloak. The other thing that's tough is you can heal pretty fast. Sorry, you can fire pretty fast, preventing you from healing. And those laser blasts that come from the ceiling can be pretty random. That's basically the way that the game works, is similar again to Dark Souls. Take a drink every time I say Dark Souls. I'm going to... is that if there's a boss that's giving you trouble, simply come back to it later when you've unlocked more abilities or gained more health or upgraded your nail or anything like that. And I will admit, I am sorry to fans of Hollow Knight. These first fights are probably pretty cringy, and that's because I didn't really get the style or the controls right away. And a lot of fights where I ended up winning, I kind of feel that I didn't really deserve it. But, that's just, that's the way we live in. I wanted to be honest, that this is my first attempt and not a flawless run. My other problem as well is that I think this area you're meant to come to after you've maybe unlocked a few more abilities, and I sort of wandered in, like, right near the beginning, not knowing what I was doing. So, he does jump away. You didn't fully defeat him yet, but later on when you have the double jump, you can fight the super version of him. So next, this is the Mantis Lords, one of my absolute favorite fights in the game. This is like an honorable duel here as well. I also love this animation. You're basically like, come at me, bro. So, Hollow Knight doesn't have much for like gang-style fights, but this is a really well-designed fight because you start off by fighting one of the Mantis Lords, and then after you defeat one, 2 others will join the fight. So first you have to master fighting one, and then you're going to have to learn to deal with fighting 2 at the same time. It's really brilliantly designed in that way. And now I will admit, this fight will probably be embarrassing to watch, because so the funny thing is that if you die the first time to this fight, one of the NPCs, Quirrell, I believe, he'll be outside the boss fight saying, hey, just so you know, maybe you should come back and upgrade your nail, and come back later. And it's basically the game's way of saying, like, hey, come back when you're better, first get good, and then try this boss. But for some reason, I didn't really take that suggestion seriously. I thought, like, him saying you need better weapons was perhaps some kind of a dynamic sort of foil between the knight's simplistic way of fighting versus Coral thinking, oh, the way to succeed is with better weapons and bigger swords and everything like that. Not that it was literally the game saying, hey, you should go buy some better weapons or something, or get good scrub before you, try this boss fight or something. So I did not take that into account. So in this fight, I don't have many upgrades, and I haven't upgraded the damage on my nail at all, so I still have the starting weapon, which is why this fight is going to take a decent amount longer than it probably should have. And one thing that I was having trouble at the time was still getting the proper idea of distance, how far away you had to be when you attack. But thankfully there's a charm you can get that will fix that, and that is the Mark of Pride charm that you get from this fight, which increases the length of your nail so that it's easier to hit enemies from further away without potentially damaging yourself. This is one of the main charms that I always used. So, you beat one lord, and now you have to fight two at the same time. And this is tough because since these lords are coming in a lot faster, it means your chances to heal are much more limited. Main time you want to heal is when they throw both of the discs at once. But it's also not perfect because sometimes, just the tip of your horns can end up being right on the hitbox for those discs. So it's kind of a slow game in that case. You gotta take your hits cautiously. What's even crazier is that in the Pantheon of Hollownest, you'll see later, there's a version of the fight where all three of them attack you at once, and that fight is ridiculously hard and ridiculously fun. So, that's pretty much all there is to this fight in terms of the strategy. I like the lore surrounding this area. Basically, all of the land has come under an infection from the Radiance, which is the Moth King. It seeks the Lamp Brother. And the Mantis tribe was committed to fighting off the infection and keeping it at bay in Deep Nest, which is basically the blight town of Hollow Knight. So, they are an honorable warrior race. They don't take kindly to outsiders, though. So, this fight is you proving that you are worthy to enter Deep Nest to fight the infection. One nice little detail is after you win the fight, all of the mantises in the village will bow to you and let you into a special room with secret items and loot. So yeah, it's a really great fight, and it's got a nice lore behind it. It's really intense, it's perfectly balanced, it properly builds up the way that you need to learn the fight. Yeah, easily one of the best fights in the game. And that's all there is to it. So yeah, that's them bowing to you. It's pretty awesome. Definitely one of my more memorable moments from the beginning of the game. So, near the starting area is a boss pretty well hidden called the Brooding Mawlek. is another boss that I would recommend fighting when you have the Shade Cloak, because with the Shade Cloak you can dash directly through his body instead of having to sort of jump over top of him. When he does that attack where he covers the entire side of the room in the sort of infection fireball goop thing, whatever it is. Plus, you get a charm called Shadow Dash, one of my all-time favorite upgrades in the game, and that makes it so that your Shadow Dash does damage to an enemy. So, you get to iframe through the enemy, and you get to damage him. And what's also really great is if you equip the Dash Master charm, that makes it so you dash more frequently. It will increase the damage of Shadow Dash, I think, by like 1.5 or something like that. So that's definitely recommended for a fight like this, or Crystal Guardian. This boss gave me a significant amount of trouble because your healing window is pretty limited, and he's pretty relentless on the attack. When he jumps around like that, it can be pretty unpredictable. And again, when he covers the entire side of the room in the infection globs, it's pretty difficult to dodge if you're not in the right position. Your pretty much only chance of healing is when you're on the other side of a room from where he fired all of the blobs. I mean, it is a fair fight, though. This is definitely not unfair. I'm struggling to think off the top of my head if there's any fight that I would consider that way in this game, but I'm sure if there is, I'll mention it when we get to those fights. And defeating this one gets you a Mask Shard. Every time you collect 4, it gives you another little bit of health. So, this boss is the Soul Master, and he can be found up at the top of the Soul Sanctum, which is above the City of Tears. This guy is definitely a pretty tough fight for early game when you have less equipment and abilities. He definitely moves pretty fast, and it gives you very little healing windows. So you have to be on your toes at all time. And pretty sure I did not have the double jump feature at this point. That definitely will come in handy for this fight, because he has that sort of downward dive. And sometimes it's completely at random, but he can basically, like, fake you out, like, and re-dive a second time. So if you aren't prepared to dodge it, he can come up and get you the second time. So the charm that I was using for a lot of this is the Baldur's Shell, and that's because at the beginning of this game I was definitely trying to play it safe and trying to stay as close to full health as possible. I was really confident on my ability to stay calm under pressure. The shell basically will allow you to heal safely, and if you get hit, the shell takes damage instead of you. But it only lasts a certain amount of time, so you cannot completely rely on it. The other annoying thing is his projectiles and how they can track you. There's enemies on the way here where they fire these projectiles, and now you have a boss that also gets to do the same thing. The lore behind this boss is that he was trying to collect as much of the essence of soul as possible to see if it was a way to starve off the infection. So, kind of comparable, I guess, to King Vendrick in Dark Souls 2, trying to find experimental ways to potentially stop the spread of hollowing. I feel like I've gotten a lot better at this fight now, plus I have more upgrades, but this was definitely a tough found that I had a habit of that in my first playthrough, and I was just wandering into these areas where I really should not have been messing with at where I was. But then again, it is nice because you get all the special abilities earlier, so, you know, it's kind of a pick and choose when it comes to that. Not sure if I'd upgrade my nail at this point either. That's probably another thing that makes this fight last not as long. Because some of these fights I feel like they just seem like to go on forever the first time, and then as soon as you've upgraded your nail and you use the Unbreakable Strength Charm, you can kill them quite fast. So, this caught me off guard, this next part, because you think, okay, you beat him, he's doing his big death animation, and there's my special ability unlocked. And then, all of a sudden, he's like, lol, just kidding, round 2, bitches. At first I thought this was just like some kind of cutscene or something. But he's just going all out, diving at you. He's gonna fake you out. I remember the first time I actually got to this stage of the fight, and then I just was so taken aback by it, I just panicked and died. But the trick is to just dash as much as possible when he's diving. And then as soon as he goes into the phase here where he just lasers at you, don't bother with healing, just kill him as fast as possible, because you won't be able to heal in time. And again, this is my problem, is I panicked into thinking, you know, I need to be close to full health. But that's not what you should be concerned about. You should be concerned about killing him faster. So you just gotta go for it. Just do it, as the great Shia LaBeouf would say. And then defeating the Soul Master will give you the Desolate Dive spell. And this lets you do sort of a ground pound slam that can damage enemies and also unlock new areas where the rocks are a little unstable. Helps you unlock hidden areas. It's pretty cool, pretty fun. This is also a boss where there's a second version of it. So, in the ancient basin, we encounter the broken vessel. It's a common thing in video games to fight a dark version of yourself, and this is Hollow Knight's version of that. Because the broken vessel is another knight born from Void who is corrupted by the infection. And some people have said this is one of the easiest fights in the game. I feel like I struggled with it a bit for where I was at. So maybe I was just underpowered, or, you know, what's tough for some people is not tough for another. But the thing that I just found was the toughest part was that I would try to run away from him, and he would always seem to know how to perfectly jump to where I ran away. He also has his whole metalhead headbanging attack, which basically turns into a bullet hell. That could be pretty difficult. And the other thing that's tough is all of the little infected balloon enemies that spawn in, because you have to keep one eye on the boss, but also keep an eye on his little minions that are coming to get you, which is why I liked using the Dream Shield. It helped starve them off. And defeating the broken vessel will get you the Monarch Wings, which is the double jump for the game. So now, over in the Royal Waterways, this lovely, very beautiful specimen is the Flukemarm. I thought this was going to be a tough fight, but it's actually really straightforward. All I basically did was stayed on this platform, and I attacked the little mini monsters that flew out of it. And then, as soon as you have enough soul to do a spell, I just fired a spell at Flukemarm. And that's pretty much the fight. I feel that if you were to run around a lot and try using your nail, that it could get a little unpredictable with all of the little mini monsters flying around and attacking you. So, for me, playing King of the Hill was the best strategy. And like that, the fight's down. It's a pretty disgusting fight, but not too bad of one. And it gives you a charm that turns your main spell that fires a bunch of little mini flukes instead. Also, in the Royal Waterways, we have basically the Onion Knight of the game, with the best voice acting in the game, the Dung Defender. He used to be a knight for the Pale King, and all of his friends are dead, so he's decided he's just gonna, hang out, just enjoying the dung. And, I mean, you can't hear it now, but you gotta listen to his voice acting. He's so energetic and fun. And his battle cry, it's like all, Fundar. It's great. It's great, really. That music also just kind of indicates that he's sort of having a little fun. He thinks you're like, another infected bug. But afterwards he realizes that you're actually a cool bro. And then he'll hang out with you. The reason he's down here is Isma, who was another knight of the Pale King. She died, and he's kind of protecting her grave from intruders. So, it's a sad story, but also, I mean, he seems like he's enjoying himself, so that's good. I wouldn't really call this a tough fight, but it's definitely an enjoyable one, because it's got a nice story to it, and it's fun. Plus it ends with him doing a Team Rocket's blasting away animation. Sorry, Team Rocket's blasting off again. He also gives you the Defender's Crest, which is a good charm. So, now, for us to proceed, we have to fight Hornet again. She's going to be more tough and more aggressive in this fight, because you have to once again prove your worth. This was probably one of the toughest fights in the game for me, at least at the stage I was at, in terms of like skill level and abilities I had. She's pretty much has the exact same attacks, but she's a lot more aggressive, and your time to heal is even more limited. So I would only recommend healing when she's stunned. And she also gains this ability where she sort of puts like extra sort of spikes around the arena, and if you don't destroy them fast, you're gonna really limit your movement. Now, this is kind of more of the idea that she is related to the Pale King, because she wants to protect the King's brand, which is in the next area. She's kind of reluctant to trust you, but eventually she sees what you're trying to do. There's no real easy way around this fight. You basically have to be very coordinated in watching both Hornet, your movement, and all of the spikes that are around the area. So, in the eternal words of Hornet, get good. I definitely did get lucky during this fight in that I probably shouldn't have gotten away with some of the healing that I did. Like I say, it's hard to rank toughest boss fights because a lot of it's dependent on what you have available. But I I would say this one is definitely the first that kind of brings in like the bloodborne speed of sorts into this game. And yeah, that's the second fight on Hornet, which she lets you go and get the King's Brand. And the King's Brand allows you to access the Abyss, where you can get the Shade Cloak. I guess she's meant to be like Pale King's daughter or something like that. She's a princess, but maybe we'll find out more in Silksong. I need to brush up on my Hollow Knight lore. That's what Moss Bag is for, though, right? So, this is Uumuu, and I think he's kind of like the sort of, like, how to describe it? He's one of the lesser bosses of this series, that's for sure. And that's because there's not really anything interesting to him. He's a giant jellyfish. And you can't attack him until Quirrell attacks him for you. And then you can get your hits in. And he only has 2 attacks. One where he spawns a bunch of electricity around the area, and another where the electricity follows you around. So, I feel he's definitely a lot more annoying than he is enjoyable, and I don't think there's much to his lore other than he's a jellyfish experiment from Monomon, the teacher, who is one of the dreamers, the one that you have to defeat in this area. I don't have footage of it in this video, but the version of him that you fight in the Pantheon is different. I do like that version. Well, I like that he's tougher, but he's definitely more annoying, because the difference there is that instead of Quirrell helping you out, there's a bunch of the exploding jellyfish that float around at periodic moments during the fight, and you basically have to like perfectly time it so that you defeat one of the jellyfish and its little core explodes right on Uumuu, thus dropping his defenses so you can harm him. And it's really annoying to try and line that up perfectly. I think that's been the bane of my existence in some of the Pantheons. Not because I've died to it, but because it's put me in such a rough shape from the fight that I'm just so unprepared for the next one. But in any case, you can defeat Uumuu, and then you can get to another one of the dreamers. This next fight is the Collector, who is absolutely crazy. You fight him in the Tower of Love. So, I just don't know, man. This guy's weird. It's weird I didn't find him tough, but I felt like I was in bad shape at the end of this fight. Every other fight I've had, though, afterwards in the Colosseum, or the Pantheon, has gone a lot more smoother. But, basically, the best thing to do is to kill all of his little monster creatures as fast as possible so that you can focus on attacking him. Most of the time he doesn't even bother attacking you, he just sort of runs around all gleefully laughing. And occasionally he'll do a bit of a jump attack at you, to which you say, "Don't jump at me or I'll stab your parents." Honestly, I think I probably just ended up in a little bad shape because I just wasn't taking this fight too seriously. I got cocky, kid. And that's a no-no in Hollow Knight. So, I don't really know much of the lore behind him, but I guess it's like he collects stuff because he's into that sort of thing. And he's the one who's imprisoned all of the grubs in the containers around. And it is nice because after you defeat him, you get a map that shows you where all the other uncollected grubs are, which will make hunting them down a lot easier, so that you can get the achievement for it, and all of his vessels contained primal aspids. You know, because that's really the hardest boss. I think we agree. Primal aspids. Just literally the worst. I just love this guy. You kill him, and he's just like laughing his head off still. Like, he's weird. Another fight in the City of Tears is the Watcher Knights. This kind of works Bell Gargoyle style in that you fight one, and then throughout the fights, multiple ones appear. Again, I think really important upgrade for this fight is the Shadow Dash, because I've basically had it where like I attack one of them and then I Shadow Dash through it, and I do this about 3 times, and you can kill a knight that fast, because while there may be 6 of them, they are fairly weak. The trick is to just stay mobile, play in your heals properly, and Shadow Dash through them. That combined with Sharp Shadow was pretty easy for me. I've heard a lot of people put this near the top of their most difficult boss lists, but I don't think they'd be near the top of mine. Never really felt that I was in trouble with them. I always felt that I had control of the situation. And again, using Shadow Dash, you're pretty much able to tank the damage and kill them pretty fast. One other trick you can do is, if you're in the area where they're spawning, you can use the Dream Nail, which will give you a pretty large chunk of soul. So, you know, that can help you replenish it a little more. And really, they do only have 3 attacks. They have a sword swipe, and then 2 rolling attacks, one where they roll across the ground, and the other where they jump up in the air. The difficulty comes from putting yourself in a bad situation based on where the other 2 are. So it's just important to not let that happen. Like I almost did, apparently. I just love the dash in this game so much. It's just so fun to just be able to iframe through enemies and also damage them at the same time. As long as, of course, you properly time it. One thing you do have to watch is that I've sometimes tried to Shadow Dash through an enemy, and I've stunned him, and then when he gets stunned, it stops you in midair, and then you take damage because you're occupying the same space as the enemy. So you do have to watch out for that, unfortunately. So now we pay a visit to the best place in all of Hollow Knight, which is Deep Nest. You know, go to Deep Nest, they said. It will be fun, they said. Just, it's great. It's such a fun place. Gotta love Deep Nest. So this is Nosk. He's a spider-like enemy that basically impersonates like characters and beings from those who wander into his areas from their mind. And then he lures them in and then kills them. As you can see, the corpses are all hung up around the area. So, you know, he's basically like a sort of this game's version of Shelob. Now, I kind of felt that he was a little tough because I wasn't really taking the fight seriously. I was sort of just like taking hits and then just attacking back and just healing whenever. And that's because the design of the arena means that it's pretty easy to exploit him. I mean, you just have to kind of stay in the corner. You have to dodge a little bit when he moves around, and you have to leave the corner when he goes on the ceiling. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward fight. That is one thing I can say. He's a lot more tougher in the Pantheon, because the arena does not give you this easily cheesable spot. there's also a version of him that is flying in the Pantheon. I do show that version in the video. I was not able to get to Absolute Radiance, but I was at the very least able to get to Winged Nosk. So that's something, right? No Absolute Radiance, but there is Winged Nosk, right? Points, please. Nosk is optional, but there is a pale ore in his arena which will let you upgrade your nail to make it stronger. So over in the Queen's Gardens area is a sort of a faction of the Mantis tribe that is a traitor tribe. Instead of honoring their duty to starve off the infection, they succumb to it. And the leader of this is the Traitor Lord. Now, you can follow a certain NPC's questline named Cloth to get her to help you in this fight. But I was not able to. I couldn't really get her in the right areas to show up to where I needed her to be. So she's not with me for this fight. I'm soloing it because no NPC summons. That's the rule. Now I don't know what it was, but I found this fight took me a decent amount of tries, which it could be due to the double damage that he does. It is pretty annoying. But every time I fought him in the Pantheon, he's one of the easiest bosses I've fought. Really, all you need to do is stay close to him so he doesn't do the ground pound AoE attack or the disc throwing attack. And you shadow dash through each one of his charges and rinse and repeat, and that's it. So another tribe of bugs are the bees. I hear you saying, oh no, oh god, not the bees, but we have to. So this is the Hive Knight. He is a honorable warrior defending the Queen Vespa from you, the intruder. The Hive was, it's the Beehive, and they were a group that did not succumb to the infection. The main point is that they make it clear that they are not the ones responsible. So Hive Knight, he's a fun fight. Pretty quick, fast, a lot of moves. But the only thing I can say is I think he's a little weak in that I don't know if I've ever died to him. And this is my first fight where I've never really seen any of his moves before. But I was still able to defeat him. So, even in the fights in the Pantheon, I feel like I can kill him pretty quickly. So, maybe you should just have a bigger health pool. Kind of like the Abyss Watchers. A really fun fight. Great duel, but it is over a little quickly, depending on where you're at that stage of the game. But still, he's great. We like him. He's fun. So, I'm going to show you sort of some of the bosses you can fight secondary versions of, at least in this case. This is the Enraged Guardian, and this is why Sharp Shadow is the best charm for this fight, because I'm pretty sure I killed him in like 30 seconds, and I only got hit by his laser at the end. Without Sharp Shadow, he's annoying, because all of his attacks do double damage. And he's guarding a Mask Shard. But with Sharp Shadow, you can heal him pretty quickly. So, next over here, this is the Coliseum of Fools, which is a arena challenge. And I didn't show the entire thing, because I didn't really have much to say for it, but this is the God Tamer fight. And he's pretty easy. The real challenge of this fight is getting to him, because you have to fight like 4 30-something waves of enemies, including a part where there's no floor, so you can't heal for several rounds. This fight was also easy because I got really good RNG. There's two enemies, as you can see, the Rider and the Beast. And the Beast monster, he has two attacks. The roll attack, and he has another where he shoots a bunch of acid over the area. And he never used that attack once on me. So, I've gotten pretty lucky in that case. Which is good, because if I had to go all the way through that trial and then go back again and fight him, that would have been tough. But there is one more ferocious enemy in the Colosseum. A beast of untold horrors. The master of all. With his fearless sword, Life Ender. He is, of course, Zote the Mighty. So yeah, Zote, he's a joke. He waves his tail around wildly. He trips over his own feet. He thinks he's all that, and his sword literally does no damage. So yeah, I'm only counting him here because his name was on the screen. And even when you beat him, he still thinks he's won. And he goes back to Dirtmouth. And then he acts all heroic, and he takes over your fangirl Bretta, and she madly falls in love with him. So you can enter her dream, where as you see she's, being fawned over by all these Zotes. And now we fight the super version of him. And this is a tough fight. And not only is it tough, it's also annoying, because you know that this guy is absolute garbage in real life, and the only reason he's this good is because this is some wild fangirl's dream version of him. So yeah, I struggled a lot with this fight, because your healing opportunity is limited. He does a bunch of jumps that have really large AoE waves every time, and I just kept on seeming to fall through him every time I tried to jump on him. And he spawns little mini ones. Yeah, he's difficult and annoying. You know what I mean? It's kind of like someone who thinks they're all bad, who isn't. But then there's an alternate version of them where they are. And you're just like, God dang it, seriously? So, yeah, that's great, Prince. So, still pretty hilarious, though. There's also a sort of gauntlet mode in the Pantheons called the Eternal Ordeal. I haven't beaten it, so I didn't show it here, but basically you can fight Zote, and then there's a gauntlet mode where you fight infinitely spawning Zote enemies, and you have to beat at least 57 of them. And there's a version of the song where he's humming it out, the voice actor's voice. It's hilarious. I love that they fully embraced the Zote jokes. I'm hoping in a song we get at least some character that's the equivalent to him. So, next I'm going to show you more alternate versions of the bosses. You basically are able to do these fights by going into, you go to the corpse of the boss, and then you dream nail the boss. So this is the more difficult version of the broken vessel called the Lost Kin. Now, what makes him really difficult is the arena you fight him in is smaller, and he's a lot faster. And the infected balloon enemies that he spawns spawn in a lot more frequently. So the trick that I found, that I got from the internet and was pretty helpful, is to use the Defender's Crest charm that you got from the Dung Defender, because that automatically kills the infected balloons when they get close to you. So you don't have to worry about sort of focusing on them. And if you combine with Spore Shroom, which sends out a spore cloud every time you're healing. You create this very much larger area that will damage enemies. So that's the combination I like to use for this fight. It's also tough because since he moves so fast, I feel the only time you're safe to heal is when he is stunned. I really feel that the Defender's Crest is so essential. Even when I run the Pantheons, I still use it specifically for when I know his fight is coming up. So that's basically the style that the Dream fights is. The boss moves faster, hits harder, and has a few extra little attacks here and there. Sometimes they're a little artificially difficult, like Failed Champion just does double damage, which I find annoying, more so than challenging. But, you know, that's what it's about. This game is got some fun challenges, and then they decided to add in extra difficult challenges for those who wanted them. You don't have to fight the dream bosses, but doing so gets you a bunch of essence that will give you rewards from the seer, the moth that gifted you the dream nail. So this here is the White Defender. He is the dream version of the Dung Defender. You're able to get to like a place where he's sleeping, and then you dream nail him. So you can fight this version. I never really noticed it until I fought them back to back in the Hall of the Gods, but he moves a lot faster in the dream version. And also he has that little AoE attack that you pretty much have to shadow dash through. I also like the detail of that he's being watched in the background by the other Knights of the King, that you could recognize Isma and the False Knight and the Pale King, I believe. I don't remember all of their names exactly, but he definitely has a sad story. But, you know, at least he's having fun. That's the thing. I also love when he does this big charge and he enrages. This is basically, you know, your time to watch out, because as you can see, he tosses a lot more dumb balls up into the air. Oh, and we have to point out, can we appreciate, as Over the Gun stated, can we appreciate the mad pubes that he has on him? Like, look at those. Like, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm sorry, I just, you know, I couldn't resist. Still, I don't find him to be a tough fight because I never really have ever felt the need like that I have to stand back and heal. Like, a lot of times I've just basically tanked damage and just gone balls to the wall on him, and you're able to defeat him. So, yeah. It's sad, knowing the way he truly feels. But, again, at the very least, he's having a good time. And that's what matters. Just hanging out, chilling out. You know, not breaking your promise to your friends. So, this next dream boss is the Failed Champion. He's the super version of the False Knight. Now, as you can see, he is a lot faster than the Failed Champion's a lot faster than the False Knight. And he does double damage. So, it's also tough in that you don't gain any soul from attacking his armor. You only gain soul from hitting his body. So, I definitely recommend to use the Unbreakable Strength charm, because you'll defeat him a lot faster. And what I also recommend doing is dream nailing the maggot body when it's exposed, because the Dream Nail will give you a bit of extra soul, so you can't gain any soul from attacking him. Therefore, you use the Dream Nail to get the soul when he is down. I'm actually very surprised that I was able to win this fight, because I came pretty close to death a lot of times. Main thing is to shadow dash through him and quickly move underneath him when he is in the air. Next we have another dream boss. I believe this is the Soul Tyrant, which is the super version of the Soul Master. This is another boss that gave me a lot of trouble, because, like the other dream versions, he is harder, better, faster, and stronger. With this fight, you want to be always moving, consistently attacking, and not letting up for a minute. I find the attack where he has the 6 orbs that rotate around, that's the best time to heal, because if you stand in the middle, you won't get hit by them, since they always have the same pattern of attack. He also does have a habit of always teleporting to the opposite side of the arena that you're on. So I think it's best to basically be like, dashing back and forth and not standing in that corner where, his the 6 orbs are going to get you. So it's not a good idea. And despite how annoyed I was that this fight took me a lot of times, it is definitely fun. And again, I think that's why there's these extra challenge modes in the game, because the regular fights, they're a little stale once you're all upgraded and stuff. And so these dream versions just really crank up the intensity to 11 and really make you give it your all. I like that this guy does not do double damage. I know that the developers of the game can design the bosses the way they want, and that's their choice. The reason I find double damage to be unfair is because I feel it is an artificial difficulty. And what I mean by that is that you have bosses where they are challenging to the player because they force you to recognize a lot of tells and learn a bunch of moves and adapt to having quick reflexes in situations. And that, I think, is proper difficulty, because when you overcome it, you feel like you really accomplished something. You had to learn all these things and figure out these strategies, and that's really good. But double damage, to me, feels unfair, because to me it's like we couldn't figure out a way to make this fight tougher in any way, or require more, thought from the player. So instead we just simply made it that you'll die a lot faster, or you have less health than what you're used to. It's a similar reason to why I did not like the Chalice dungeons, at least the defiled ones in Bloodborne, because instead of creating new interesting bosses, they simply took older bosses, gave them so much damage, and then gave you half your health. So, that basically every attack was a one-shot. And I didn't really find that, fair. It was difficult, but not in a fun, enjoyable way. So that's just my little take on the whole double damage, half health sort of thing. What do I know? So this next set of bosses, these are dream bosses, in that they're ghosts. They're ghosts of warriors that have fallen. And you basically, you find them and dream nail them, and then you can fight them. They are usually pretty simple, or they have a bit of a, like one type of attack, or sort of a gimmick thing. The main reason you would fight these guys is to gain more essence to upgrade the dream nail. So this one, Galien, or Galien, how you say it, his main thing is just, he has his weapon that's spinning around attacking you, and throughout the fight he spawns more of these circular discs to attack you. You find him in Deep Nest. And the thing I find with all of these sort of ghost warriors is they're not really that difficult, because they usually have a very low health pool. The trick is to just persevere and get through their one attack. There's still like little fun, enjoyable moments though, that's for sure. And they can be tough if you have to fight a lot of them in a row, especially the Pantheons. And again, doing them is mainly to get extra essence. This next one is Xero, I believe. It's with an X, just to be weird. And he's probably the first one you'll find, since he's really close to where you get the Dream Nail. This fight against him here is not too tough of a fight. He's very tough in the Pantheons. If I haven't mentioned before, the Pantheons are basically boss gauntlets where you fight multiple bosses in a row with only 1 or 2 checkpoints in between. So, here the fight's pretty simple, but what makes it tough in the Pantheon is that you have only a small platform to stand on, and you can potentially fall off the edge. He is also tough because his only attack is to shoot these swords at you, but I find what can be unpredictable is where the sword is going to come back to him. That's usually what gets me, is the sword coming back. And also, your time to heal in between sword attacks is very limited. He also has a second phase coming up where he will spawn 2 extra swords, and then he fires the swords at a much faster frequency, basically meaning that you cannot heal during this time, unless you have the quick heal charm. There isn't really much on lore for these bosses. Basically, most of them are just, warriors who have died, but their sort of spirit or ghost remains with your body. And after you defeat their ghost, you claim their essence. And essence is like some sort of thing. Basically, if soul is like the power of the void, and essence is the power of the light. To my knowledge, at least. Again, watch Mossback, he probably explained it pretty well. He's great. But I like the way this game works, because the dynamic is that you are the darkness and you are the quote-unquote good guy, and that the light is the evil. So it's a bit different from the dynamic that you're used to. Usually you're used to the dynamic of dark is bad and light is good, but here it's you are the dark and it's the light you're trying to defeat. So essence, I guess, is the power of the light that allows you to invade the mind, and soul is the power of the dark and the void, or something like that. I'm not exactly entirely sure. Maybe Silk Song will clear it up. Maybe it won't. So, this next dream boss is Elder Who. And here's my pro league strat for this guy. Do not fight him until you have a Shade Cloak, because both of his attacks are like these pillars that slam into the ground, and it's very annoying at the beginning of the game when your dash does not give you iframes. So my Pro League strat is get Shade Cloak so that you can have iframes, and then this fight is a complete joke. I've fought this guy multiple times in the Pantheons with Shade Cloak, and I think I've been able to do it like without taking a single hit, because you just dash through literally every attack. But again, if you fight him at this point, which I did when I did not have Shade Cloak, it's a lot tougher. Because my first instinct is, oh, I have a dash, you know, I can be safe from the attack, as most other games dash function works, but not yet. He's also annoying because he has a habit of teleporting away as soon as you get close to him, and then you have to dodge another attack. So, definitely a hard boss in the early game if you don't have Shade Cloak. Again, it's hard to rate difficulty based on that, but I will say there are a few, objectively hard bosses, in that regardless of what you have, they are difficult. This guy is not one of them. Neither is Crystal Guardian, but Pure Vessel definitely is. Don't worry, we will get to that guy in a bit. Again, I don't know much about the lore of this guy. He's a ghost of a warrior, and we're gonna defeat him. Not because we have to, but because I just want him to stop doing those damn pillar attacks. But still, it is nice to, be able to get good at a boss, come back to it, knowing what you need to do, and just totally owning him. As Yahtzee, a great British-born Australian once said, "You may have defeated me the first 12 or 13 times we met, but now I know all of your attack patterns, and I'm basically fantasy Batman." And that's such a great feeling. You love being fantasy Batman. I also recommend the Thorns of Agony attack that I used. That's a charm where if you get hit, spikes come out from you and damage anything near. So if you do accidentally run into him, like I did a lot in that fight, he will end up taking damage. So it's pretty good. Next, Dream Warrior boss is Markoth. This guy is the bane of my existence, particularly in the Pantheon of the Night. So, he has these swords that are constantly spawning and charging towards you, and they can also spawn away from, the map, they can spawn outside the map. And he also has a dream shield, constantly rotating around him. But sometimes it does not fully rotate around. It will, switch direction. So it's really annoying, because it's unpredictable. And you have to get in and attack him. Plus, when he's on low health, he spawns a second dream shield. So, what the best strategy to do is, his sort of second attack is he will hold in position like that, and one of his dream shields ascend with Gorb. I don't really understand who he's meant to be, but I love his voice acting. He's like, all like wailing around and stuff, and he kind of looks like a Cthulhu monster, but he also kind of looks like the God Seekers that you find in the Pantheon. And he's a little bit of a tough fight, because once you get him down to the end of his health, he basically spawns like 3 waves of those swords. And it's really annoying also in the Pantheons when your movement space is limited because you only have one platform to stand on. And if you don't heal right away, you'll miss your opportunity. So it's kind of a fight where you want to try and keep him above you and then get and hit him fast. But thankfully he does not have a lot of health, so you should be able to kill him pretty quickly. But mainly try to keep him positioned above you and avoid going close when he's on the side. Again, you can't hear his voice acting, but like, it's great. Trust me, you definitely gotta look it up. Like, if I could do a top 5 voice acting in Hollow Knight, I don't know who exactly would be on there, but I do know Gorb, at the very least, would be. But Dung Defender's still number 1, because Dung Defender's the best. This is another Dream Warrior called No Eyes. So, her sort of gimmick is she does not attack you, instead she teleports around the arena and has all of these sort of ghost energy spirit things moving back and forth. And as the fight goes on, the frequency of the sort of ghost spirit things will increase. So, this is a fight that I definitely found a little tough at first, or annoying, because it's very dark, your vision is limited, and the sort of pattern of the ghost energy floating up and down can be hard to predict. But it's mainly a fight where you want to take your time and just try to get over where she is fast to at least get 1 or 2 hits on. And once again, Shadow Dash is very useful because you can dash through the ghost energy. I can't remember the exact charm setup I used for, each encounter, but Shadow Dash was almost always equipped, and I think I may have used one of the charms to increase my spell damage, because, if you can hit her from range with spells, that's pretty good. And you also have nail arts, where you hold the attack button and charge it up, and I will admit they are pretty cool, but I didn't really find much use for them, because I found it was a lot easier to use the Quick Slash and Mark of Pride charms, so you attack a lot faster, and you have a lot longer of a range for your nail. I think that was more useful than doing charge attacks. But I've also seen some people do some pretty good things with it. So, I will admit, I was kind of an idiot. I forgot to save my fight with this Ghost Warrior Marmu when I actually encountered him in, like, the regular overworld. So, here I am, fighting him in the Hall of the Gods. He's a very easy fight, and his main thing is he just rolls towards you. He's fun. So, that is all of the Dream Warriors and alternate versions. So now we move to the Grimm Troupe DLC, which we have Troupe Master Grimm. Nightmare King Grimm will be later. So, I don't get mad at me, because I know it's kind of a thing that he bows to you, and you're supposed to bow to him. Like, that's the rule. And I was kind of mad that this fight took me so many times, so I just angrily lashed out at him. I didn't realize it would be the fight where I beat him, so I am sorry for that. Okay, just go easy on me in the comments. In every other fight, I bowed. You're just not seeing it in this video. So, Grimm, he's basically like the head of this evil touring carnival of sorts. And he asks you to take this Grimm child, which is like this little mini bat, and he wants you to like charge up the flame for it and help it grow, or something like that. And when you've charged up the Grimm child, you come back to him, and then you can fight him. And this is meant to be like not really a battle, but a ritual dance, where you are like, you know, entertaining the crowd. So he's a very fun fight, but also ridiculously tough, especially when he goes into like this bullet hell pufferfish mode. But don't worry if you thought he was tough. They said that's okay. We'll give you a nightmare version where he's even tougher. So, another thing that makes this fight tough is you have to have the Grimm Child charm equipped, but you don't actually get to use the Grimm Child during the fight. So, you're basically giving up 2 of your charm slots for a charm that you don't use. You know, you'd be better off having Wayward Compass equipped. Basically, you have to practice a lot on his moves and be prepared for all of his tells. I feel the best attack to get damage in is the bit where he stands back and fires the bats at you. That one is easily dodged by just jumping in the air. But don't get too used to that, because the nightmare version of him is completely different in how you should go about it. So, afterwards, he's all like, bows. See there? See? I bowed to him at the end. You're welcome. No need to thank me. See, and he's all like, hey, we put on a good show. You're awesome. And now he gives you the Grimm Child, and the Grimm Child is even stronger. So, after this, you can go out and defeat more enemies to charge up the Grimm Child. They're marked on your map. And then come back and fight the nightmare version of him, which is even crazier. Also, because he does double damage. Yay! But it's worth it because he will give you what will probably be the final charm notch. So, here we are, back again, with the fully charged up Grimm Child. And now we will fight Nightmare King Grimm. Once again, it's annoying because you have to have the Grimm Child equipped, which means you're wasting 2 of your charm slots for a charm you don't get to use. So, that is what's nice about the Pantheons, is you can have whatever charms equipped. You can have your lead strategy. That's how crazy this guy is. He gets a full screen title card. So, I feel that's the attack that's best to heal, the one where he does the flame pillars. Yep, double damage. It's lovely. Now again, I am definitely not that great at this game. I've seen people who can beat the Pantheon in 20 minutes without taking damage, and I'm definitely not at that level. I definitely played this fight safe. fish attacks. But again, playing it safe, because this fight is single-handedly probably the reason this video took me so long to make. Like, I started playing this game back in November, and I didn't play it too frequently, but I actually kind of got tired of losing to him, and I went and I played the entirety of the Dead Space trilogy, just, like, out of spite, because I could. But that was also because I hadn't platinumed all of the Dead Space games yet on my most recent account. Like, I had an old account where I'd platinumed them, and I wanted to do it again. Plus, people are still playing the co-op of Dead Space 3, so, you know, that's pretty cool. So, on the charge attack he did there, I could have probably been getting hits on him, like, by just doing a little leap attack. But again, playing it safe. You can get hits on him when he does the whole, like, transform into a bad thing. But again, I want to heal whenever possible, because double damage. I know that this guy is considered by most to be their favorite boss in the game. I'm not exactly sure about that, who I would place as my favorite boss. I mean, he is up there. Mantis Lords are pretty great, and so is Pure Vessel and Dung Defender. You know, I'm also quite a fan of Hornet, of course, because she's got a great story. Music for this guy is on point too. Like, seriously. I think the composer's name is Christopher Larkin or something like that. Check out the soundtrack for this game, and it's very on point. It really lends to the atmosphere. I think another thing that makes it tough is the whole spikes coming out of the ground. On regular Grimm, there was a tell for that because he'd stand in place, but here it comes without warning. Another thing that's important is to keep note of when he does the puffer fish attacks. I'm pretty sure he does it at 75, 50, and 25% health. So, you know, that's kind of the thing to let you know if you're getting close. One other thing that really messed me up is the fire bursts that come out of the ground. They actually leave a little bit of an AoE on the ground afterwards, so you have to watch out for that, because it actually extends slightly larger than what the original blast was. So, yay, we beat Grimm. Excellent. And when we awaken, the Grimm Troupe is gone. And the Grimm Child is even stronger now, at its strongest phase. I don't know what we did, but yay. So the next thing I'll show you is that there were several mini-bosses that were upgraded in the God Home DLC, or Godmaster, I believe, God Home, whatever, into actual bosses. So, I obviously did not save my footage of fighting these guys in the main game, because I didn't consider them actual bosses at the time. So, I'm going to show you footage from the, you know, Hall of the Gods, the Pantheons, because now they're actual bosses, apparently. This is the Vengefly King, I believe, or Vengeflies. Originally, in the regular game, you would fight this guy, where you found Zote originally. And while he may have been a challenge at the time, in the regular game, he is much easier now, and regardless of how much damage you take, you should pretty much always come out on top. Just jump over him when he comes near you. Though, if you do fight him in the final gauntlet, the Pantheon of Hallownest, is the massive moss charger. So, this one, in this fight, I took a little bit of damage, but basically, if you simply time it right, you can simply stand in front of him when he does that charge attack and just attack him until he's dead. I didn't realize you could do that, so I spent like all this time like jumping over him and everything. But literally just stand in front of him and spam attack and he'll die, and you'll take about 2 hits. Originally, he was a mini boss in Green Path. Next Pantheon boss is the Soul Warrior. He was originally a mini boss in the Soul Sanctum, obviously. Now, if you are to fight him in the first Pantheon you fight him in, or the boss select mode, you fight just him. But if you fight this version of him in the Pantheon of Hallownest, you will have like the little mini ghost monster things, whatever they're called, spawn in with him. But again, he's not much of a challenge. Of course, we can't forget Tiso. He's truly an interesting character. Oh, never mind. Yeah, he's dead. We don't care about Tiso. Next boss that was upgraded into an actual boss is the Oblobs. Oblobles. Oblobles. Yeah, that's how you say it. Originally, you fight these in the second trial in the Colosseum, and now you can fight them here. So they're basically bullet hell bosses. They just spew out a shit ton of projectiles. Thing is after you kill one of them, the second one gets enraged because you killed its partner, and so he'll spit projectiles a lot faster, but not too much of a challenge again. Now, this is the Sisters of Battle. This can only be fought in the Pantheon of Hallownest, the final gauntlet. It starts off just like a regular fight of the Mantis Lords, but you'll see after I kill this first one, it gets really real, because instead of 2 of them, all 3 of them attack you at once. This is one of the most intense fights in the game, because you have to be like so on point with your dodges. I've seen footage of people do this fight without taking damage, and it's a thing of beauty. It's an art form. I think most important thing is don't try to get multiple hits on each lord as they appear in front of you. Only get 1 hit, and then focus on dodging the next one. It's basically a fight where you need to be like 3 steps ahead at all time. And it's also tough for this first bit until you kill one of them, because it's impossible to heal. Like, I don't know when you would realistically be able to, which is why this fight got pretty intense. So yeah, I didn't know if I was originally going to be able to actually get to this point in the game, but I was able to, and I'm really glad that I stuck with it and persevered to get to it, because this is a truly great fight. But once you get at least 1 lord down, it basically just turns into the regular Mantis Lords fight, and then you actually have a little bit of breathing room and time to focus. So yeah, really great fight. Definitely worth persevering. This next fight is against the winged version of Nosk. Again, I didn't think about including him since he's not too different, but different enough, I guess, to count. This fight you see here is my first and only fight against him, so I had no idea what his move it seems that, like, his charge attack, you have to, like, time your jump properly, because I could never seem to actually, like, jump over him. So, in the end, I just decided to resort to completely relying on the Shadow Dash. He summons infected balloons, but thankfully it's only at certain times, not randomly like the Lost Kin, so it's a lot easier to handle. Again, this is definitely not one of my best fights in the game, but that's because I felt I was still primarily learning how his moveset was. I didn't actually expect to beat him this time. But yeah, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I just couldn't get the jump timing down right on him. This version, you only actually fight if you are able to do the Pantheon of Hallownest. Basically, there are 3 Pantheons you can fight at the start. The Pantheon of the Sage, Pantheon of the Master, and Pantheon of the Artist. Each one is about 10 bosses, with a special one at the end. I'll show you them in a bit. Those will unlock the Pantheon of the Knight, which has the Pure Vessel at the end of it, which is a super tough version of the Hollow Knight. And after you beat that, you unlock the Pantheon of Hallownest, which is, again, every boss in the game in a row, including the Sisters of Battle and Winged Nosk. At the end of it is the Absolute Radiance, which I've not gotten to, and I'm not going to bother with. So, this is Nailmaster Oro. He is at the end of the Pantheon of the Sage, I believe. He is one of the nail masters you find around the game, and he teaches you one of the nail arts. His nail art he teaches you is the Slash. So after you beat him, another one of the nail masters, Mato, shows up, and now, again, Ornstein and Smoog style, they will fight you together. I think the fight is actually more intimidating than it is difficult, because it seems to me that they either attack one at a time, or they do the same attack simultaneously, if you are close enough. So that's an important thing to remember, that if you time it right, you can really wail on one of them while they're waiting for the other one to attack. You have to watch out for their charge attacks. Mato has the nail, the Cyclone Slash nail art, and Oro has the Slash. But most of their moves can be dashed through and easily dodged. And I also find if you spam the attack with Quick Slash, you can actually parry their moves. So it is a fight that you need to watch out for, but it is pretty good. Let's see, I bowed to them. Again, good thing to do. At the end of the Pantheon of the Artist is Paintmaster Sheo. He teaches you not the Great Slash, Great Slash. There's Dash, Cyclone, and Slash. He's definitely tougher than the two of them, because he's pretty relentless, has larger health, and he has pinged attacks that just cover the entire arena. I do like the concept of him as, showing that swordsmanship is an art, or that perhaps he's grown tired of swordsmanship and resorted to art instead. But basically, all 3 of these guys can be found as NPCs in the regular game, and they teach you those abilities. So I do think it was cool that Team Cherry included them as special bosses in the Pantheon. skills in terms of his swordsmanship. See, what I like about Sly is originally you find him locked in a place behind the Gruz Mother. And he is like the general store merchant to sell you stuff. And after you've unlocked all of the nail arts and bought all of his stuff, you find out that he is the nail master the whole time. So it's pretty cool. And now you're actually going to fight him, which you couldn't do in the regular game. And he also has this really tough second phase where I found the only way to really get damage on him was to tank damage and get hits during the iframes. Plus he's also tough in that he can use every one of the nail art abilities. I think I've only fought him this once. So it's a pretty tough fight, but also pretty intense and energetic. I know that some people have recommended using a stalwart shell because you'll have longer iframes and more of a chance to attack him. So, this next fight, in addition to Nightmare King Grimm, is another reason why this video took so long to make. This is Pure Vessel. You see, the Hollow Knight was created as a way to contain the infection, but he was not completely hollow. He still had emotions of sorts. And so, he was overcome by the infection. It did not fully be contained. So the Pure Vessel is meant to be like the Hollow Knight at full strength. Think of it this way. If the Hollow Knight is Artorias corrupted by the dark, Pure Vessel would be a version of him completely uncorrupted, with his good arm intact and riding Sif. That's how tough this guy is. He also does double damage, and I think it's impossible to heal unless he is stunned. And also he stuns for so little you can only get realistically one hit in. So yeah, this is an incredibly intense fight, but it feels so damn good to be able to pull it off. I've seen people do this fight flawlessly, and you know what? More power to you. I'm never going to be as good as you. Also, I nearly died to that hit. I killed him about half a second before he attacked me. If he had landed that hit with the Void Tendrils, I would have died. So, now we come to the final bosses of the game, the endings. This here is the Hollow Knight. We have made it to the Temple of the Black Egg because we have defeated all of the Dreamers who have sealed it away. And we can do one of two things. We can defeat the Hollow Knight and take his place, containing the infection, or we can enter his mind and then fight the Radiance, who is the true final boss. Again, with the Dark Souls comparison and Bloodborne comparison, I feel it's similar to Bloodborne's ending. You have the opportunity to fight a boss, but if you do things right and get a certain item, you can fight the real final boss. In this case, the idea of either fighting Gehrman or the Moon Presence. Now, the Hollow Knight is a fun fight. He is ridiculously tough, but he's also not. And what I mean by that is most of his attacks can be dashed through, and he actually will try to help you kill him by stabbing himself. So, I found that it was very easy to simply just, tank damage and attack him. But I think this is intentional. Also similar to the idea of Gwyn as a final boss. He's not a great warrior anymore. He's a husk of what he used to be. He's corrupted by the dark. And he wants you to defeat him. It's a very sad, tragic fight. also glad that it's easy, because it makes it that easier to get to the Radiance. So, in this ending, we defeat the Hollow Knight, and we absorb the infection into ourselves. This is basically a sort of a cycle continues ending. The infection that was infesting the minds of the bugs and making them insane and destroying Hallownest, we now take into ourselves. The knight is pure of heart, or purged of emotion, so he's able to contain it, and he is now sealed away, and he will contain the infection and prevent it from affecting the world. So, it's not necessarily a bad ending, but there is more that could be done about the situation, you know? So, that's no good. Let's try that again. If you obtain the Void Heart by getting through the White Palace, good luck. Hornet will show up and will give you the immortal advice of get good. If you attack the Hollow Knight again, you get pretty much the same ending, only you can see Hornet dead in the corner. By dream nailing the Hollow Knight, we can now challenge the real master, the Moon Presence. I mean, the Radiance. The Radiance was the original ruler of Hallownest, but he was driven out by the Pale King. And now we're able to basically fight and kill God. Because, you know, that's how every anime works these days. No, I didn't kill him my first time, obviously. So, the Radiance is a ridiculously tough fight with a lot of moves. And every attack does double damage, of course, because that's just the way the difficulty works in this game. And you basically have to do jump attacks to get him. And you will need the Shadow Dash to get through his laser beams. If you time your attacks properly, which I did not. Make sure you actually dash when your Shadow Dash is recharged. This is again why the Hollow Knight is an easy final boss, because he's not really the final boss. It's meant to tell you that there's more to actually do. And also it would be really annoying if you had to fight a really tough boss to fight an even tougher boss. The point is that he's a little easier, so he's more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? He's more of an inconvenience on the way to the Radiance than an actual challenge. Again, if you want the real challenge of the Hollow Knight, fight the Pure Vessel, because that's what he was originally meant to be. And I know the word epic gets thrown around a lot these days, but this truly is a epic final boss fight. As you start to damage the Radiance, the power of the Void shall rise with you, because we now have the Void Heart, which I guess means like the Void is on our side or something like that. So, phase 2 as we ascend to the platforms here. I definitely got lucky with RNG on this, because he always seemed to spawn right where I was. And anytime he didn't attack, I didn't really seem to get hit by it while I just sort of spammed and wailed on him. Quick focus is also a must, because since every attack is doing double damage, you want to be able to heal twice as fast. So, you're going to fight him around in this area for a bit where he has the same attacks. And then we get to what I only can describe as one of the most epic endings to a boss fight, where we literally ascend from darkness to destroy the light. And the spirits of all of our fellow brothers in arms rise with us to support us. Now, I nearly messed this up as well. At first I thought you just had to damage a mirror, but no, you have to get a direct hit, like that. You get one more direct hit on the Radiance, himself will join you and just let you go to town on the Radiance and destroy him once and for all. So, again, kind of like defeating the Moon Presence, but a lot more enjoyable of a victory. Instead of an easy trek through a boss because you've overpowered it, it is the ultimate challenge. Now that we've defeated the Radiance, the cycle has now been broken, and the infection will no longer spread. I think. Something like that. There are a few other alternative endings if you defeat the Absolute Radiance in the Pantheon of Hollownest, which I have not, and I don't know if I ever will, because again, I still like to get good. But basically that will give you a little extra bit where the Godseeker is like corrupted by Void, or something like that. But hey, at least our waifu Hornet is still alive. We, the Knight, we're not really dead, we've just like ascended, I think, to a higher plane of being. And now the spirits of all of our fellow brothers are able to finally rest in peace. Or, you know, something like that. I can watch Boss Bag's videos, I'm sure he'll explain it all. Maybe. Probably. But, yeah. That is Hollow Knight. Developed by Team Cherry, who I think is like 2 or 3 guys or something like that. And this is their first game. They did a fantastic job with this. I've never really been one for 2D Metroid-vania style of games, but I think I'm gonna have to try some more similar to this out, because I really enjoyed every element of this. It was the environment and the mood and the atmosphere and the boss fights. It was just all so well put together, and it had so many cool little controls and little things, like all the attacks and the charms and the equipment. It was just fantastic, really. You know, there's that word again, fantastic. I want to give a special shout out to all of the YouTubers that have helped influence me in my videos that I make. So again, I've mentioned Mossbag. He does videos on the lore of Hollow Knight. He's great. And also Over the Gun. He's been a Let's Player for a while. I watched his playthrough for advice on Hollow Knight. He's really great too. And Democracy, who influenced me on my Dark Souls videos. He's done some stuff on Hollow Knight. He's great as well. So, closing thoughts. I mean, I just love this game and everything about it. I don't think I could really find anything I disliked about it. I'm really looking forward to Hollow Knight Silk Song. Originally there was supposed to be a DLC that was centered around Hornet, but I guess they've decided to expand it into a complete game of its own. So hopefully that will be out in a bit, because I would love to play through that as well. And yeah, good job, Team Cherry. You guys made a really great game. It's fantastic. It's not normally my style, but hey, you won me over. And, that's definitely saying something. And again, sorry, not sorry for the lack of Absolute Radiance, but I still need to get good. Oh yeah, also, there's this, Mr. Mushroom guy you can, find around and, talk to, and then at the end of the game, he, flies into space or something. And, yeah. To be continued. That's a thing. Oh, but, you thought I was done. No, we are not done, because the whole idea of ASMR is that it's a relaxing sensation where you just watch something that is incredibly enjoyable and just chill out. And I was thinking, what is more enjoyable or relaxing than getting that sweet revenge against that bug that stole all your Xero, you know? So this here, I think, is the best way to end the video, because it just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. So thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed that. Maybe I'll make another video in this style soon. And have a good night.